Hello, everyone. Thanks for listening to Wake Up, Look Up, a podcast where we connect events happening in real time to the gospel of Jesus Christ. I'm Zach Weihrauch. And in today's episode, we're asking the question, what are you waiting for? And this podcast episode is primarily for people in their 30s. So if that's you, listen up. And if it's not you, share it with someone you know who fits in that demographic. It's prompted by an article I read by Rachel Wolf in the Wall Street Journal that made the point that Americans in their 30s are increasingly delaying or foregoing completely those milestone moments in life that used to help us kind of find our meaning in life. Home ownership, marriage, and parenthood are all on the decline among people in their 30s. They're less likely than ever to buy a house, to get married, to have kids. In fact, 1/3, that's a massive amount. I mean, 1 in every 3 people in their 30s say they're not going to get married, and half say they're not going to have kids. Those are staggering numbers. But what's interesting is that Rachel Wolf makes the point that on the one hand, people should be able to decide, I guess, for themselves whether they want to get married or have kids or buy a home. Those are entirely individual choices. It also follows, however, that this generation of people in their 30s are more pessimistic about both their current and future life than they have ever been. In fact, they will talk about consistently feeling like they are failing. Without those mile markers, how do you know if your life is progressing? What do you look at for satisfaction or even just a sense of fulfillment? In fact, increasingly, people in their 30s are articulating feelings of hopelessness and even some decision paralysis. I know what I don't want. I don't want to buy a home. I don't want to get married. I don't want to have kids. But what do I want? In a life free of traditional mile markers, where are the mile markers that you go to instead? And hey, if that's you in your 30s and you've largely rejected the more traditional path through life, what, if anything, does the Bible have to say to you? Well, the first thing I want you to know is that the gospel leads to fulfillment. That's the purpose. Jesus didn't just come to die for us so that we wouldn't go to hell or just so that we would spend eternity in this ethereal place called heaven. Jesus says in the Gospel of John, chapter 10, verse 10, that he came that we might have life and have it more abundantly. And he's speaking to people living in that moment. He's not just talking about eternal life, although absolutely. He's talking about your life now. If you don't feel fulfilled, if you don't feel like your life has purpose, if you don't feel like you're really living, Jesus is saying to you, he wants more for you. And he's telling you that the place you go for that isn't buying a home or getting married or having kids. It's him. In fact, some of the hopelessness you're feeling could be God's grace to you to drive you to Jesus. And not just to Jesus, but to this community he has built and he is leading called the local church, a place where you're consistently being told that life is about one another. Listen, 30-year-olds are reacting to the message of self-fulfillment our culture has preached to them, that if you just make choices on the rubric of what you want, of what you think is good for you, you're going to be happy. You don't want to buy a home? Don't. You don't want to get married? Don't. You don't want to have children? Don't. And 30-year-olds are making those decisions based on their own happiness and then wondering, why am I not happy? The Bible calls us to more. To a community of people where I think less about myself and more about you, vice versa. A community where we give generously, we live generously, we think generously, finding fulfillment in the blessing we can be to other people. Maybe you don't want to have a family, but I bet you can be a blessing to the family that's sitting next to you in church. Maybe you don't want to buy a home, but with that disposable income that you're not using to get a new roof, I bet you can bless the people in need. The Bible's calling us to stewardship, to witness, to greater purpose. And listen, I happen to believe that having a family, getting married and having kids is a great way of doing that. But it's not the only way. It's not even necessarily the best way. After all, Jesus, the guy who said he came to give us life and life more abundantly, was himself neither married nor a parent. Life is meant to be fulfilling. It is meant to be hopeful and purposeful, but you don't find that in the things your parents did, and you don't find it in endless vacations, social media loops, video games, and Netflix. You find it in Jesus and in his kingdom. Show up this Sunday to a local church and begin the adventure of life and life more abundantly. Hey, thanks so much for watching this episode of Wake Up Look Up. While you're here, take a minute to like and subscribe. Really helps us get the word out. Don't hesitate to leave a review wherever you might find this podcast on an audio level and help spread the word. And hey, while you're here, check out all the other content we have at Christ Community Chapel on YouTube. Some of those videos are popping up on the screen now. Click on one.